from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Tuesday, the 3rd of October. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. We are at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester.
Off the rails, Rishi Sunak is expected to announce whether or not he will scrap HS2 between Birmingham and Manchester tomorrow. The Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, has thrown his support behind the Prime Minister to make the right decision.
For that, I'm not sure that decision has been made. That decision hasn't been made. This Prime Minister does the right thing on the basis of the evidence, coolly, calmly, unemotionally.
And trans women banned. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, making a big speech today, describes his plan to ban trans women from female hospital wards as common sense.
War on woke. Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch delivered a rousing speech on race, gender and Brexit yesterday, in which he said Britain is the best country in which to be black.
I tell my children that this is the best country in the world to be black, because it is a country that sees people, not labels.
And cheaper food shopping. For the first time in 2 years, there's been a monthly drop in food prices. Will this trend continue? We're going to get the thoughts of the Minister of State for Food this morning here at the Tory conference. Your first Tory conference.
It is, it is. We're going to be talking in a moment as well to a woman here who has a stand. She's a baker and she met Rishi Sunak this morning. She gave him his favourite cake. We're going to be chatting to her in just a moment. Email us your thoughts as well this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, here's the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Good morning, it's 9:31. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. Businesses are demanding immediate clarity as confusion continues over the future of the northern leg of HS2. There's growing speculation the government is planning to scrap the Birmingham to Manchester leg because of soaring costs. But the Prime Minister insists a decision is yet to be made. Rishi Sunak is expecting to make an announcement about the project at the Conservative Party conference tomorrow. Junior doctors are expected to hold a rally outside the conference centre in Manchester later. They've started a 3-day strike in England alongside consultants in a row over pay. Radiographers have also walked out this morning for 24 hours, meaning tens of thousands of patients will be unable to have scans. The British Medical Association wants the government to return to the negotiating table, warning if a credible deal isn't offered, new strike dates will be set for November and December. The government says this year's pay rise was a final and fair settlement. The government is set to ban trans women from female hospital wards. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, is expected to say the plan will help restore common sense to the NHS. In his speech at the Tory conference, he'll announce proposals to push back on wokery in the health service. He told The Telegraph the move will protect women's rights. Under the changes, trans patients would be treated in separate accommodation. The price of a monthly food shop has fallen for the first time in more than 2 years. Prices were down by 0.1% in September compared to the previous month. That's according to the British Retail Consortium. It brought the annual rate of food inflation down to 9.9%. That's the lowest point since last August. And now the group, which lobbies on behalf of the industry, says it's because of fierce competition between the supermarkets. That's it for the moment. More on our website, gbnews.com. And that's it from me. Now back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We're at the Tory Party conference in Manchester. You might have noticed.
Bev is at her first Tory conference. I don't think I can remember how many Tory conferences I've been to, but I think the first one was 1988. Mrs Thatcher was Prime Minister. Neil Kinnock was Labour leader, and it's been all downhill since then, really. So I don't know how many Tory leaders I've known.
And are they different now? Like, how different are they?
Tell you what's different now. They are all incredibly controlled, and it's all very formulaic. So if there's votes on the floor, the leadership don't care. The same will happen at the Labour conference, and it's much more commercial. So here we are in the commercial area. You've got big exhibitors like British Telecom, the National Farmers Union across the road away from us, and this is important revenue for all the political parties. Labour will have a lot of people at their conference too next week.
Well, this morning I was chatting to a lady who had just met Rishi Sunak, so she's joined us here on the stand, Lauren Baker.
Hi, okay.
And you are a baker.
I am, yeah.
I love that. How, with a name like that, what else could you be?
Yeah.
How was Rishi Sunak this morning?
Oh, he was lovely. He spent so much time with me. He was chatting, we was talking about his family, as his daughters are into horses. He says he has a real big sweet tooth, so I've gifted him some cake, and he said he's going to enjoy them with a cup of tea.
Now, what cake did you give him?
I've given him the chocolate brownie and a Victoria sponge and a lemon drizzle, which you've got right in front of you here.
The lemon drizzle here. Now, which is his favourite? I think it's
He
this
said
one.
lemon, yeah.
I think that's absolutely right.
He did say
Politicians do fib, as you know, lot, but I think that is probably true. Did he offer to pay?
It was all very rushed, so.
So that's a no then. Look, it's the royals.
It was a gift from me.
Okay, but Laura, it's the royals who don't carry money.
Yeah.
Politicians should always carry money. I was on that stand next to you only the other day buying. Have I got it here? I haven't got it up. I'll get it out later. My Tory boy beer mat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I paid for mine. Unlike the Prime Minister.
Well, do you know what? I was watching him going around the stands this morning, and there was a stand that provide dogs for visually impaired people, and he genuinely spent a lot of time talking, and I'm sure we've seen before, sometimes politicians do not have the best social skills in the world, but I was really impressed, I have to say, watching him interact. I was pleasantly surprised.
I can't say how nice he was. He was so nice. He was interested. He spent so much time. He wasn't rushing. He just was genuinely interested in me and my business.
And were you surprised by that?
I was really surprised.
Right.
I thought it would just be a quick in and out job, and it wasn't.
Okay.
I'm severely dyslexic, so he was spending time talking to me about that.
And have you done conferences before?
Nope, this is my first one.
So first prime time you've met a Prime Minister as well?
It is, yeah.
What did you think you'd think of him?
I don't know. I didn't think of anything really. I just was shocked that obviously he was coming round. We only found out last night that he was coming.
Can I ask why you thought you'd bring the business here this week?
I just thought it'd be a great opportunity. I struggled in school, so I just wanted to show young people and my son as well that if you keep going, I started in lockdown. Lockdown was amazing for me. It's grew my business, and just to show if you keep going, you don't give up. And
are you selling lots of cake? Have Tories got a sweet tooth?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
A lot of presents for wives.
Yeah.
Don't overthink that, Lauren.
And your name is Lauren Baker.
It
and
is.
your company is called Baker's Bake.
It is.
Which is great. And is it doing well?
Yeah, I'm doing great. So I do all artisan markets. I do a lot with Independent Street, I'm here with this week.
And that's independent businesses?
Independent businesses.
Really
We're all
important.
small. I mean, I work from my home.
Do you?
Yes.
So your kitchen is a Very lively place to be.
Yes, it is. And we're all small independent businesses. We all work super hard. You see us in winter getting up, freezing cold, but we're a family, and that's what's so nice. We all help each other.
Yeah.
Good.
Brilliant.
So just tell us, how much would it cost me to buy a picnic?
£5.
£5.
Yeah.
Cheap at the price.
Everything's cheaper in Manchester. I love coming here.
Yeah. And you've got a lovely accent, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
And this is your second time on television, because you were a model when you were very young.
I was,
weren't you?
yes, I was. I was on this morning when I was little. Princess Beatrice's dress.
Oh, really?
Oh, I was. On a rocking horse.
If she looked familiar, that explains it.
How fabulous is that?
Right, Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good luck. Lovely. And enjoy your cakes there on me.
We don't mind buying them.
No, you can have them. They're gifted.
Well, we're going to come and give you some cash.
Okay,
that's for
thank
sure.
you.
We don't want to be associated with these politicians. So don't
Right,
pay for anything.
thanks, Lauren. Okay.
Baker, lovely to see you.
So, despite calls from his own MPs to stick with the HS2 rail project, there are now reports that the Prime Minister will axe the multi-billion-pound project's final leg from Birmingham to Manchester.
We're joined now by Lord Berkeley, who is the peer who was brought in to conduct an independent review of the whole HS2 project, and that report was commissioned by Boris Johnson. Lord Berkeley, you're going to get your way, it seems. We're not going to get. We might get an announcement tomorrow, but it seems pretty certain. Birmingham to Manchester, dead in the water. That's going to save the taxpayer how much money?
Well, I think probably 30 or 40 billion. But I hope that he's also going to say that he'll spend some of that on improving the links between, say, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Bradford, in other words, east-west, because it's fine cancelling a project which has got totally out of control. I mean, the figure for the complete project is now 180 billion, and that's a ridiculous amount of money. But the important thing for me is that he puts some of that, of what he's cancelling, into improving the existing rail links, which, as many listeners will know, is really awful, going east-west across the Pennines, and also from Birmingham to Nottingham and Derby. The money needs to be spent there, not as much as it will be cancelled by HS2, but quite a lot of it. So I hope he's going to give something back to the region as well.
And how can he make this a good news story? Because it is dividing people, actually. Here in Manchester, would you believe, when you talk to people, they say, well, we were never that bothered, actually, about getting from London to here in about 10 minutes quicker. So to some people here, I am a Mancunian, it does feel like a triumph of common sense, but he will obviously get a lot of stick for this as well. How does he make it positive?
Well, I think he makes it positive by saying that you can get to Manchester from Manchester to London pretty well using the existing trains, and get from Birmingham to London pretty well. What you cannot do is get so well from Manchester to some of the smaller towns in the west of the Pennines and across to Leeds, where the service is really bad. And I think he's got to give them something back and say, within a short period of time, 5 years or whatever, we'll have an improved service so that you'll be able to go and shopping more easily in different cities. You'll be able to get jobs further from your home because you'll have a decent rail service to get from one to the other or go to school and college. People want to see something back in return. And this is what's failed. And I think Andy Burnham has been complaining that the line mustn't be cancelled. But on the other hand, he's also been claiming that you've got to have an improved link east-west. Well, that means it's probably going to cost 200 and something billion. And I think he's sensible enough to know that the government may not have enough money for both. And I think it'll be the section from Birmingham to Manchester that'll get cut and hopefully replaced by something going east-west, which doesn't have to go so fast, but it has to be reliable, electrified, and easy to use.
Can you just explain to us, Lord Berkeley, before we let you go, the original cost of this project, this wretched scheme, was about 33 billion, commissioned by I think Gordon Brown's government, actually. Boris Johnson got enthusiastic behind it, so did David Cameron. How did the cost go, in your view, from 32 billion to potentially 180 billion pounds? Eye-watering.
I'm afraid it's because It's been very badly managed, not just by HS2 itself, but by the Department of Transport as well. And when we've been trying to dig into their costs, given a government project, you'd think they would have to give us information about the real costs, but they haven't done so. We've got armies of consultants who are being paid a lot of money. The contractors have got some very interesting contracts, which I think mean that they're trying to save, that they're not going to lose money if it gets cancelled, but we don't know yet. But nobody's kept a real tight grip on the costs like you would do if you were a proper private sector project with shareholders who were very, very worried about the cost ballooning. And it's none of the other projects we've seen in the past. Crossrail, I used to work in the Channel Tunnel. None of us have got to the stage where we've got a sort of 6, 8 or 10 times cost overrun before the thing is even half finished.
All right, Lord Berkeley, thank you so much for joining us. That's Lord Berkeley who did that independent review into the costs of HS2, and he's been proved right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're joined now by the Director of Dale Partners, the pollster, Scarlett Maguire. Morning, Scarlett.
Morning.
How do you think this situation with HS2 will affect the polls? Some people who've been clamouring for HS2 to be stopped in its tracks, no pun intended, will think this is a good sign that common sense has prevailed. And yet there will be those who think it's the North being let down again and being treated as second-class city.
Yeah, so I think there are two issues here that might affect the polls. The first is the actual decision itself, and the second is some of the comms around it. So I think when you think about the actual decision, HS2 voters, a lot of them are very ambivalent. They just don't really care.
Sure.
And then otherwise, they're really split. I would say the ones who support it sort of really support it, the ones who oppose it really oppose it. But most of the public are pretty much just don't really know, don't care. However, I think the problem is it's now been in the headlines for the last 2 weeks, and actually, more than anything else, what's been in the headlines is not just people who are against the government, but people in the government themselves talking about the phenomenal waste of money that we've seen. And I think what you'll see in focus groups is people sort of charting this up as another waste of money potentially from this government, another U-turn, another just a bit of a mess. And I think actually that might have a bigger impact than the decision.
And it also, doesn't it look like Rishi Sunak's been dithering? Because I've watched him here. He's been around this morning doing a couple of broadcast interviews, and he's refusing to say if the line's going to be cancelled. We know it's going to be cancelled, Prime Minister. It's just when you tell us. So it does look like he's dithering and not in control, and that's not a good look.
Exactly, and I think it's actually the opposite of what they're trying to do at the moment. So I think if you think about their net zero push, their car announcements, they're trying to paint him as a much more sort of action man rather than inaction man, as Keir Starmer said. And I think the problem is that even if this announcement was done perfectly and it was coming with lots of other measures, perhaps east-west connections or something like that, then you say, OK, this is them taking a decisive decision that's good for the country. But the problem is, just as you said, it's the dithering that we're seeing, and actually that's the last thing people need to see from Rishi Sunak.
Do you think, I mean, you've been watching these conferences for a long time. I mean, I was listening to something on the BBC the other day. I mean, they're in a different conference to me because they say morale is terrible, everybody's on the verge of, throwing themselves off a 6th floor window. I don't think, I've been to conferences where the morale is much worse, like last year when Liz Truss was imploding.
Yeah, I think it's actually really funny you say that. Every person I stop who I haven't seen yet is saying exactly the same thing, which is, oh, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. Yeah, I arrived on Sunday and I thought, oh, it's a bit dead, it's a bit miserable, but actually it picked up and the atmosphere is not so bad.
It's funny because Sunak keeps throwing out these curveballs which pose a dilemma to Starmer. Like, how does he now handle HS2? What he will be sitting there thinking, what do I do now? Do I say I would continue with HS2 up to Manchester and support the North, even though so many of the population think it's a waste of money? It puts him in quite a tricky situation.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, and that's exactly what, again, this Conservative strategy doing. It's trying to paint Sunak as a man who can take strong, bold decisions against Starmer, who, is characterised, at least in focus groups, but not taking any positions or stances at all. Again, actually, I would say that I guess Starmer has the comfort of waiting till it's actually been formally announced. But I would say that it would be in his interest to announce a position pretty soon, because I think people are getting quite tired of him, of it appearing that he's not saying what he thinks about things.
Scarlett, great to talk to you. I think we're going to see you probably again tomorrow. That's Scarlett Maguire, who is leading pollster. Now, Kemi Badenoch, she waded into the culture wars yesterday here at the Tory conference, about time too. Let's hear what she had to say.
I pay tribute to the many women's and LGBT groups, such as Conservatives for Women, Sex Matters, and the LGB Alliance, who, despite unbelievable opposition, kept fighting this policy, refusing to be cancelled and speaking the truth. There's no other party that will defend common sense. Next week, Labour will tell the country that it is ready for government. But ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you this. If Labour MPs won't tell us what a woman is, what else aren't they telling us?
Oh, where do I look?
At us.
So we are joined now by the co-founder of LGB Alliance, Kate Harris. Good morning, Kate. What did you make of what Kemi Badenoch said yesterday?
I thought it was brilliant, and it was such a highlight for her to name those of us who've been really fighting against the madness. We're completely apolitical. LGB Alliance has no political allegiance. But for 3 years running, we've applied to each major political party to attend the conference, Liberals, Labour and the Conservatives. And it's the Conservative Party who've had us 3 years running, and the others have banned us. So we feel very welcome here. This is the place where you're allowed to speak the truth. Yeah. And that's what Kemi does, and that's what we do.
Is there a bit of frustration, though, that that's just because the mood music of the country has changed to some extent? Do you think that the Conservative Party are just reacting now to the fact that there does seem like there is a common sense approach to transgender issues, which has started to evolve through the media, through conversations, and now maybe they could have been supporting you all along?
Well, we don't look back, we look forward. Yeah. And frankly, thousands and thousands of men and women, but largely women, have driven change, not only in England, but in Scotland. We're struggling in Wales. But in terms of winning votes, I think every MP needs to get angrier and happier. Every candidate now standing from whatever party needs to look at what is the electorally salient issue of the day. Voters like the truth. Yeah. They do not like to be patronised, and it seems to be that the Conservatives are prepared to listen to what we've been saying for years, and many other groups. You cannot change sex. A child cannot be born in the wrong body, and for goodness sake, let's not teach them lies in schools.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at what Kemi Badenoch said in the speech, and I've been waiting for her to make this speech for a long time, Kate. You and I have talked about this with a sense of frustration, but she said it was the Conservative government that stopped the shameful SNP and Labour politicians in Scotland effectively going ahead with putting rapists who are then identifying as women in prisons, and also stopping that trying to stop that balmy law of teenagers changing their gender at school without even possibly talking to their parents.
Yes, I mean, we've been through, what's happened, Andrew, is that there's been a coup. It's an attempted coup on liberal democracy.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole new set of ideas that make no sense when they're scrutinised, that's been forced on the whole population of this country and other countries with no democratic debate. Yes, the Conservatives have presided over this, but thankfully they're coming to their senses and drawing back now and saying, no, we will go no further with this.
When is the Education Secretary going to stop fussing on about concrete in schools? And I've forgotten her name. What's the Education Secretary?
Gillian Keegan.
Gillian Keegan. And actually give the clear guidance that you want in schools that say parents have to be told if their child turns up in the classroom and is going to change their gender or their pronoun. We still haven't had that guidance.
We haven't, and thankfully Gillian Keegan and Kemi Badenoch, we understand, are engaged in fruitful discussions on this, because the other thing that must change is that if a parent cannot see RSE materials, they should
that's relationship and sex education.
They should have the right to withdraw their child. Yeah. That is fundamental. So yes, what's happened at the DfE is a fascinating case study. I recommend you read an article by Stephanie Davis-Arai of Transgender Trend. She traces the influence of Stonewall over 13 years through the DfE. You can see the changes in policy that they drove, an unelected body who attempted to take over our educational system, teach children a pack of lies and develop a pipeline straight to the Tavistock Clinic, where these children end up having...
Which is going to be closed down, of course.
Which is being closed down, but there are 5 new units being set up, and some of the disgraced Tavistock staff are getting roles in those. So we cannot relax. We've stopped the coup to some extent, and the Conservatives have been so helpful in seeing the necessity of this, and it's a vote winner. I've got to say
absolutely. I can't understand why they don't get on with it.
Rishi stands up and says, This is stopping. We are no longer teaching gender identity ideology in schools. We are stopping every single private clinic that is prescribing puberty blockers on the internet. He will see a surge in the...
Yeah.
You know,
I'd argue particularly among women. I would say particularly among women.
Mothers.
Yeah, mothers.
Can I say, we've had so many fathers.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Fathers with daughters. Rishi's got 2 daughters.
Yes. Sure.
These parents know if they don't do something, they could lose their own children.
Kate, what's your theory on why there are so many more children now deciding that they're born in the wrong body using that phrase?
I blame myself. I blame myself for a lot of it. I was an ardent supporter of Stonewall. We created a monster. Everybody took Stonewall's
Stonewall, of
words.
course, was they organised a campaign for equal rights for gay and lesbian people, and then moved on to the trans issue.
Correct. And up until 2015, Stonewall's name was trusted. So we could lobby ministers, we could lobby MPs, we could talk to anybody, and they knew we were speaking about equality. Nothing more, nothing less. Equality under the law. Stonewall lost its collective mind in 2015, and they have been promoting this ideology through government, through the civil service. That's why a lot of ministers are not making progress, because they're snafu'd.
I was talking to a GP yesterday who was saying that what she's seeing now is that anorexia and bulimia have almost disappeared in the clinic, and they're being replaced by transgender conflict crises.
Look at what's fashionable. It's not fashionable to be a goth. It's fashionable to be trans or non-binary.
Well, founder of LGBT Alliance, Kate Harris, thank you so much.
Great to talk to you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Still to come this morning, more on the rebellion inside the Prime Minister's party over the scrapping of the HS2 Northern Leg. Thank you for joining us. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, it's a blustery, showery day. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Alex Burkill. If we start off looking at the bigger picture, and there is an area of low pressure just to the north of the UK, and tightly packed isobars indicate that it is going to be quite windy, breezy for many of us. Meanwhile, high pressure is building from the south, and that is going to quieten our weather down across southern parts this week. Through the rest of Tuesday, though, yes, it's breezy, and there are plenty of showers around. Some sunny spells in between the showers, but particularly towards the north and west of the UK, those showers could be quite heavy at times, and there may be some rumbles of thunder mixed in as well. Temperatures are going to be down a little bit compared to recently. It's going to feel quite fresh at times, especially in those brisk, blustery winds. Through the end of the day, we'll continue to see some showers, particularly across northern and western parts. Some clear skies developing down the east and in the south as well. Meanwhile, as we go through the night, we are going to see a swathe of wet weather pushing its way in from the west, affecting many parts of Scotland. Some heavy rain likely here. Temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount for many towns and cities, though some rural spots towards the east where we get the clear skies could turn a little chilly. So Wednesday then, a bit of a north-south split, a fairly wet picture across many parts of Scotland, quite cloudy. The rain will be heavy at times and building up with some high totals, particularly for western parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, a drier picture further south, albeit there will be a few showers to watch out for, particularly across parts of Wales and southwest England. Temperatures for many will be similar to today.
Up next, more on the split inside the Conservative Party over whether they will or they won't scrap HS2 Northern Leg. Let me let you into a secret. They're scrapping it, but we just don't know when the Prime Minister's going to tell us. Get on with it, Rishi.
We are. Well, do you know what? We're desperate for a cup of tea and coffee here.
And
right? We're desperate. The queues are so long.
And when I queued up for my cup of tea yesterday, I said to the very nice girl here in Manchester conference, I said, can I have a cup of English breakfast tea? She said, sorry, love, we only sell normal tea. I smiled sweetly and said, that'll be fine. Just fine,
I love this city. We are in the greatest city in the world. We're in Manchester
saying
this
that
morning.
earlier when she got soaked in the rain.
I forgot my umbrella. What an idiot. Right, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel. Don't go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
At Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Tuesday the 3rd of October. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. We are, as you might have noticed, live at the Manchester Tory conference.
So off the rails, Rishi Sunak, well, he's going to, but just don't know when, that he's going to scrap HS2 between Birmingham and Manchester. The Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, has thrown his support behind the PM.
First of all, I'm not sure that decision has been made. That decision hasn't been made. This Prime Minister does the right thing on the basis of the evidence, coolly, calmly, unemotionally.
Trans women ban. Health Secretary Steve Barclay describes his plan to ban trans women from female hospital wards as common sense.
And war on woke, the Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch, she delivered a tub-thumping, rousing speech on race, gender and Brexit yesterday, and she said Britain is the best country in which you can be black.
I tell my children that this is the best country in the world to be black, because it is a country that sees people, not labels.
And is it time for a cheaper food shop? For the first time in 2 years, there's been a monthly drop in food prices. Will this trend continue? We're going to get the thoughts of the Minister of State for Food this morning. Get in touch with us this morning on email, gbviews@gbnews.com, as always. But first of all, here is your news with Aaron.
Very good morning to you. It's a minute past 10. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. Businesses are demanding immediate clarity as confusion continues over the future of the northern leg of HS2. There's growing speculation the government's planning to scrap the Birmingham to Manchester leg because of soaring costs. But the Prime Minister insists a decision is yet to be taken. Rishi Sunak's expected to make an announcement, though, about the project at the Conservative Party conference tomorrow. Meanwhile, the government's set to ban trans women from female hospital wards. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, is expected to say the plan will help restore common sense to the NHS. In his speech at the Tory conference, he'll announce proposals to push back on wokery in the health service. He told The Telegraph the move will protect women's rights. Under the changes, trans patients would be treated in separate accommodation. Junior doctors are expected to hold a rally outside the conference centre in Manchester later. They've started a 3-day strike in England alongside consultants in a row over pay. Radiographers have also walked out for 24 hours, meaning tens of thousands of patients will be unable to have scans. The BMA, the British Medical Association, wants the government to return to the negotiating table, warning if a credible deal isn't offered, new strike dates will be set for November and December. The government says this year's pay rise was a final and fair settlement. Murderers who carry out sexually motivated attacks will automatically face a whole life sentence under new powers. The legal expectation on judges will apply retrospectively to those who've already committed the crime but are yet to be sentenced. Justice Secretary Alex Chalk says for the most dangerous and depraved killers, life really should mean life.
Where that is the option that judges should be thinking about as an initial proposition, it now becomes the default. So it's what should happen, unless, of course, the judge decides there are exceptional circumstances. And we think that puts the law in the right place, that meets the instincts of the British people, and, as I say, does justice and provides, a crumb of comfort for families after the most appalling crimes that they feel justice is truly being served.
The Justice Secretary is also expected to announce plans to introduce Jade's Law to Parliament. Named after Jade Ward, who was murdered by Russell Marshall in 2021, the bill will strip parental rights from those who kill their partner. Despite serving at least 25 years in prison, he still retains parental rights. In the United States, Donald Trump has attacked a judge and prosecutor on the first day of his $250 million trial in New York. The former US president's accused of fraud, falsification of business records, issuing false financial statements, and conspiracy. Attorney General Letitia James accused him of generating more than $100 million by lying about his property empire and materially overvaluing his assets. But Trump hit back, saying the trial is a sham, Ms. James is corrupt, and the judge should be disbarred, along with making fresh claims of election interference.
It has been very successful for them because they took me off the campaign trail. Because I've been sitting in a courthouse all day long instead of being in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, or a lot of other places I could be at. This is a horrible situation for our country. It's never happened before. It's election interference. They're interfering with the presidential election of 2024, and the people of our country see it.
The price of a monthly food shop has fallen for the first time in more than 2 years. The prices were down by 0.1% on average in September compared to the previous month. That's according to the British Retail Consortium. It brought the annual rate of food inflation down to 9.9%. That's the lowest point since last August. Now, the group, which lobbies on behalf of the industry, says it's because of fierce competition between supermarkets. Emergency services have spent the night tackling a huge fire after lightning struck a recycling plant in Oxfordshire. A fireball lit up the sky when a gas tank exploded at a food processing plant in Cassington. The firefighters are still monitoring the site. No injuries, though, have been reported. This is GB News across the UK, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker to just say play GB News. Now, it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Well, we're expecting Rishi Sunak to finally tell us he's scrapping the HS2 rail line from Birmingham to Manchester, but we don't know if it's going to come in his keynote speech tomorrow or when, but he's certainly going to tell delegates that it's under review.
That's right.
It's finished, it's over.
And it will free up more than £10 billion to spend on other transport infrastructure projects. We're joined now by David Campbell-Bannerman, founder of the Conservative Democratic Organisation. Good morning, David.
Morning.
First of all, will you explain to our viewers and listeners, what is the Conservative Democratic Organisation?
Of course. Well, CDO, we exist for greater party democracy, and we have a 7-step agenda, like an elected chairman, constituencies choosing their own candidates. This used to happen, but it doesn't happen now. It's all very centralised. Democracy matters because if you get the members put back in charge, then actually they reflect the public's views better. And the whole party attracts more members, more support overall. That's why it matters.
But David, you are in danger of becoming a party within a party. Lord Cruddas, who founded this organisation with you about a year ago, he said in his speech here on Sunday night, don't give any more money to the Tory party. Give the money to your organisation. If you don't give any money to the Tory party, it grinds to a halt. And there were 15 or 16 Tory MPs at that dinner, wildly clapping and cheering. They're going to be for the high jump, mate.
Well, the thrust of that was, let's channel those funds directly to certain MPs who support democratic values. It's not like, abandon the party, because we're very pro the party. We want to win the next election.
You were more pro the party when it was led by Boris Johnson.
Yes, but we're actually about party democracy and party reform. We're not actually about any individual, so it's not just about Boris. He's not even an MP at the moment. But we are, it really matters, democracy, because, membership has collapsed. It was 500,000 when we had the new constitution in 1998 under William Hague. And now we're looking at, 140,000?
Well, we don't even know. They won't tell us.
What's changed that means that your organisation is now necessary when it wasn't before?
It's always been necessary, and it's not like suddenly arisen. It's just, I think, we are losing members in droves, and we're about to put up the membership fee in January by something like 60%. And I think that will be the trigger to drive many people away. I mean, CDO tries to keep people on board. We have Nigel Farage came to our dinner on Sunday night, and we were delighted to welcome him and delighted to welcome him.
He got a rather big round of applause.
He did. But we want to bring, unite the centre-right, really, under CDO. And we do encourage people to come back from Reform and other parties. And that can be very powerful. You're talking about like 50% plus. When you get it right, we saw it under Theresa May briefly, we saw it under Boris. You're talking about 50% of the country actually, back this centre-right agenda.
Yeah.
I sensed it at the dinner. I sensed it here yesterday. When Nigel Farage walked in here, it was like the return of the king. It was extraordinary. It was the parting of the Red Sea. Crowds gathering round, people crowding here to hear what he had to say here on the stand with me on GB News yesterday, all wanting the photograph with him. He is the king across the water, isn't he?
Well, I was his deputy leader at UKIP. I came back to the Conservative Party. I think he may come back to us, hopefully.
Do you think so?
I think it's entirely possible if you get the formula right. I mean, CDO exists, as I say, to represent the centre-right, where Nigel is quite happy, actually, in that sort of realm. And Reform, in our electoral system, Reform is on 6%, 8%. We know it's not going to win MPs. It's a very hard formula, unless you have proportional representation, which has a lot of problems with it. So internal reform, which is what CDO is about, I think is a far better alternative than setting up yet another party or 2%, 8%.
How does the Prime Minister view your organisation?
Well, mixed, to be honest.
Did he send a message of goodwill when you launched it? I don't recall it.
No. No, look, we're not anti-Rishi. It's important to say that. We are about party democracy. We're working well with Greg Hands, the party chairman.
Yep.
We are calling for quite radical reforms. But if we put the members back in charge, then I think the whole party will be stronger. You could get, like in Canada, hundreds of thousands of members came back to the Conservative Party. There's a good model there, and we need more activists. I mean, elections, not many people are turning up to help.
Yeah.
To be a far more effective fighting.
Well, it doesn't feel, if we're going into the general election with the Conservative Party presiding over the highest tax burden this country's had since the Second World War, why would people clamour to join the Conservative Party? It's not a Conservative thing to do to tax people so heavily.
Well, you see, we say, what do you get for your membership? If you can't choose your MP, because central office do it for you, and you get told who you're having, if you can't elect the party leader, I mean, Rishi Sunak, the problem
wasn't elected, was he?
It was not about Rishi, but about the way he was elected. It was actually, who voted for him. Even the MPs didn't vote for him.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help him. There's no democratic mandate. And also policy. Who listens to members on policy now? There are CPF or whatever it is. But we want a policy forum, the spring conference. It's a very technical conference in spring. We want to turn it into a policy conference so ministers actually listen to policy ideas, then they come back in October and they roll out their accepted policy. But all of this will drive membership because it'd be worth being a member.
And I guess what you're saying as well is there's a sort of dissatisfaction and a disillusionment with politics outside of Westminster to some degree, outside of these sorts of events.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer obviously proposing 16-year-olds get the vote.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to get people in younger, get the vote to 16-year-olds. How would you feel about that?
Well, funny enough, I'm actually quite pro it. I saw in Scotland, I helped in the Scottish referendum. I'm half Scots, I think it's. And
maybe you were against independence.
Yeah, of course. Good. I was, very
Just we better check.
Very pro-union.
Good.
But I did see what was funny because there was that controversy then about 16-year-olds voting.
Yeah.
And I met a lot of school children at various offices who were very engaged. And actually, I think getting young people engaged is not a bad idea. So maybe I'm slightly out of the line.
I think I'm with you on that, David. No, I think,
and they
yeah.
take it seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we ask you about a big policy that is apparently tearing the Tory party apart, if you listen to the BBC, HS2? Look, he's obviously going to cancel it. It's a very bad optic that this debate is happening while we're in Manchester in a former railway station, David.
The Midland Railway.
You could hardly make up. Railway station till 1969. Yeah. But actually, Beth and I were talking about, we actually think, get rid of it, because it's not very popular anyway. It's probably a vote winner, and the money you'd save from cancelling it, you spend on rail projects linking up east and west across the Pennines.
Well, I worked on HS1, which is the Channel Tunnel Railway.
Yeah.
And that was
supposed to go up to Scotland. There's supposed to be a connection. Never happened.
It was very well engineered to King's Cross. It followed existing railway lines, existing roads. HS2, I think, is very badly engineered because it goes hell for leather at 400 kilometres per hour. And it's a lot of tunnelling, which is very expensive.
Of course.
And so I query whether there's any business case now for London, Birmingham, if you're not going to go further to Manchester. The business case falls apart if you don't come to Manchester. But I'm afraid, I think things have moved on. There are better ways of getting here. And I've done my own paper, HS.net, as on my personal website, but it's about using the East Coast Main Line, which is very flat, very fast, no tunnelling required. And Mallard got the world speed record in the 1930s on that railway line for a reason, because it's very straight. Now, you could go to Doncaster and then link up with the one that you really want to build, which is HS3. Because people have really struggled between you. I think.
Yeah, I said, Leeds to Manchester, 40 miles.
And York. That is worth building. Liverpool, Hull could be a new economic area like the South East.
Does this tell us that he's listened, that Rishi Sunak has actually listened to people like you who know this system, who understand the pros and cons? He's looked at the costs and the benefits and made a sensible decision.
I mean, I welcome the fact the Prime Minister is returning to pragmatic conservative, like net zero.
Very good.
And it's questioning costs. Are the benefits worth these massive costs? Especially if it's all out of control. And I think it has been a gravy train. I mean, I know it's a bit of a, cliche, but there's a lot of people getting huge amounts of money out of this without really the case for it being properly explained.
Yeah.
There are better ways of investing in rail. I'm doing a project on railway reopenings, sort of anti-beaching right around the country, which I hope to launch later this year.
I thought they were going to do that, wasn't that one of the announcements of the last government? They were going to reopen all the stations that were closed down by beaching in the 60s?
Well, not all of them, but I mean,
some of them.
Oakhampton has been reopened. That's fantastic. And various stations could be reopened. But, this money for HS2, tens of billions, could actually transform rail right across the network. And I think we've come to a point now where we've got to really challenge, what are we trying to do? We can't afford to just throw money at this, not with cost of living. So I think it's right for the Prime Minister to actually review
And
it.
briefly, the Home Secretary will speak this afternoon, Suella Braverman. She is, some cabinet ministers are refusing to endorse the language she uses.
Yeah.
I welcome her language because she tells it as it is. It ain't working, the immigration system. We've got to stop these boats crossing the channel. They're illegal migrants.
Yeah, I was fully behind Suella Braverman. I thought it was a brave speech, dare I say. But it was right. It was a measured speech. It wasn't extreme. We've got to address these issues, because if we don't address them, there are extreme groups that will arise. You're seeing it, like Sweden has had to send in its army, because of the problems created by mass immigration. We don't want to go down that road. I was involved in the Northern Ireland peace process. I know what it's like using the army in the streets. So I salute her for it, and she's created a debate. Let's have a rational debate. Let's not get hysterical.
Yeah.
Very reasonable. David Campbell-Bannerman, always reasonable.
Yeah.
Founder of the Conservative Democratic Organisation. What about Boris, by the way? Is there any chance?
We love him. Where's Boris?
He's not here. Imagine if he was here. It'd be a beauty competition between him and Nigel Farage, wouldn't it? Who would win?
What if they get together?
Who would win? Those two. Yeah, I know. Well, which one would be the leader? Yeah.
Right, still to come. I'm going to be having a little walk around the conference. I'm going to speak to some party members here on the floor. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, it's a blustery, showery day. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Alex Burkill. If we start off looking at the bigger picture, and there is an area of low pressure just to the north of the UK, and tightly packed isobars indicate that it is going to be quite windy, breezy for many of us. Meanwhile, high pressure is building from the south, and that is going to quieten our weather down across southern parts this week. Through the rest of Tuesday, though, yes, it's breezy, and there are plenty of showers around. Some sunny spells in between the showers, but particularly towards the north and west of the UK, those showers could be quite heavy at times, and there may be some rumbles of thunder mixed in as well. Temperatures are going to be down a little bit compared to recently. It's going to feel quite fresh at times, especially in those brisk, blustery winds. Through the end of the day, we'll continue to see some showers, particularly across northern and western parts. Some clear skies developing down the east and in the south as well. Meanwhile, as we go through the night, we are going to see a swathe of wet weather pushing its way in from the west, affecting many parts of Scotland. Some heavy rain likely here. Temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount for many towns and cities, though some rural spots towards the east where we get the clear skies could turn a little chilly. So Wednesday then, a bit of a north-south split, a fairly wet picture across many parts of Scotland, quite cloudy. The rain will be heavy at times and building up with some high totals, particularly for western parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, a drier picture further south, albeit there will be a few showers to watch out for, particularly across parts of Wales and southwest England. Temperatures for many will be similar to today.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows, Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Tory Party conference here in Manchester. I've got out of our little studio to have a walk around this huge old train station, as it was, the convention centre here. Now, this is the Conservative Party shop. So if you really are a big fan of the Conservative Party, then you can buy all sorts of merchandise. They have an apron here with Margaret Thatcher on it. This food is not for burning. I must say, I'm quite a fan of an apron.
Here all week.
But their best-selling item are the Keir Starmer flip-flops. Obviously, you understand the $16.99 for a pair of flip-flops. I think that's quite expensive, actually. So there's all sorts of people here this morning. It's a really interesting opportunity to get together and see who does support the Conservative Party today. I found these 4 very young gentlemen who just arrived. Hello. Your name is Louis. Louis, you are a young Conservative Party member. Why?
Well, you know, I just think it's been a tough time recently, and it's just my family grew up as Conservatives, and I just got to stick with my family, stick with the family roots, yeah.
Amazing. And Ross, how about you? Where's your interest in politics come from?
So my interest comes from my family as well. And obviously my family have been Conservatives all my life, so I've just kind of been brought up with it.
Did they make you come here?
No, absolutely not. It's my own choice, but I agree with lots of the principles of the party. So
you're the kind of boy, so you sit at home having your meals with your family and you chat about politics?
I feel like, yeah, so especially like my gran and stuff, you can get into like really interesting debates with like people from like the older generation and stuff. You can kind of like contrast views, especially with my sister and stuff, more being like going off to uni and having different views to different people. It's quite interesting. I feel like doing politics at college kind of fuels that and allows you to kind of have like contrasting views with other people and get into nice little debates. So
are you all studying politics as well? Yeah. Are you all at sixth form college together or high school or whatever? Yeah. And what do your friends say when you say that you're a member of the Conservative Party? Because it's traditionally, for the older voter, that's the stereotype, isn't it?
Well, I believe another part of being a Conservative Party member is believing in economic liberalism, which many of our generation don't seem to understand.
Yeah. Well, tell our viewers, what do you mean by economic liberalism? Sorry, I feel like I'm now giving you a little test on your A-level syllabus. That was a bit mean, but go on, explain what you mean.
Being able, the free market, low taxes, low corporate taxes, and allowing businesses to thrive.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing, guys. And what would you say is the difference, Ross, between the Conservative Party today and Labour?
Well, I just think at the moment there's a big stigma about the Conservative Party that a lot of people who maybe aren't as educated in the field think about it. But really, I think it's quite easy for maybe the Labour Party to say they'll do things when they're not in power. And I think it's a lot more difficult when they're really in power to get things through.
Well done, lads. Thank you. Thank you all so much for talking to us on GB News. You see, it's funny, isn't it? The Conservative Party is in pretty safe hands, it seems, in the next generation. Andrew, back to you for now.
Thank you, Bev. Now, competition between supermarkets has led to the first monthly drop in food prices for more than 2 years. The British Retail Consortium said prices in September down not much, but 0.1% from the previous month. With perfect timing, we're joined by the Minister for Food, Farming and Fisheries, Mark Spencer. Did you write this script in advance? I mean, food's been going up relentlessly, and now we've had the first fall for 2 years.
I think, to be fair, it's, you know, the Prime Minister is mounting this war on inflation. It's really important that we get a grip of inflation, because it really does damage low-paid and pensioners and people who've not got assets. So inflation is our primary battle. I think we continue to invest in our UK food producers and our farmers to try and make sure we're as efficient as possible. But we are driven by the winds of a global pandemic and a war in Europe, which has had an enormous effect on people's standard of living.
How big a factor is the war in Ukraine with the impact on the grain price?
I mean, it's huge. So Ukraine was the breadbasket of Europe. It produces nearly 70% of sunflower oil, which you won't know that you consume, but every Walker's crisp, of course, is cooked in sunflower oil. So it's had a huge impact on grain movements around the world and the price of protein, if you like, and that does drive all the way through the food sector. So it knocks on to poultry prices, to pig prices, to milk prices, and it makes it very challenging for farmers up and down the country.
What can the government do to help families watching this programme who are really struggling with the shopping bill? They look at the supermarket drawer and they have to take something out because they realise they can't afford to pay it.
Yeah. Well, so number one, of course, the Chancellor's put a huge amount of cash into supporting families with their energy bills and to make sure that they can afford to pay their energy, actually paying almost half the energy bill of people up and down the country. But as a government, we're also supporting our UK farmers to make sure that they can be profitable, but also can continue to produce top quality food at a reasonable price for our consumers. Something which they've done for generations and something which we should be very grateful for.
What about these supermarkets?
So we of course, we've got to have fairness in the supply chain.
Is there fairness?
So I think so. Let's not bash supermarkets too hard.
Why not?
Because to be fair to them,
Why not?
all the way through the pandemic, we had food on the shelves.
Sure.
You know, they've done a good job of keeping us well fed. Actually, when you look at the price of a basket of goods in the UK, it's much lower than it is in France and Germany. That's because of the competitiveness of our supermarket sector. But there has to be fairness in that supply chain. So you've got to have farmers who get rewarded for the risk they're taking in producing those commodities and those crops. And if the retailer is taking all of the profit and the farmer is taking all the risk, that is unfair.
Now you speak from interest because you know all about farming. If you're a milk farmer, how much milk is the farmer getting at a pint if they sell a pint of milk?
So literally, you know, it can be down at 30 pence a litre at certain times of year when you compare that to, you know, £1 a pint in the shops. So I think we've got to make sure that enough of that profit gets passed down the supply chain to the farmer, and that's why we're actually going to legislate to make sure that those dairy contracts are fair to everybody who's in the dairy sector.
And also we know that the various regulators are looking at the supermarkets about the labelling and all that sort of thing. But I was listening to the Prime Minister this morning. He did 2 or 3 broadcast interviews. He was pressed every time. How could you possibly know what the cost of living crisis is like when you're married to the daughter of a billionaire? He's the richest Prime Minister we've ever had. Is that a fair criticism, Minister?
No, I actually don't think that is a fair. I mean, of all the Prime Ministers we've seen, you know, Rishi does seem to be very in tune with normal people and certainly with my constituents. He's a very thoughtful man. He actually considers what's happening in the world and he wants to improve that. And I think actually we're blessed with him as our Prime Minister at this moment in time.
But he is the richest Prime Minister we've ever had.
Well, so it makes him. It means he can't be bought. It means he can't be influenced. I think it makes him wholly independent in his thought process. But you know, I think whether he's rich or whether he's not, I think is irrelevant. What matters is, are his policies right? Is he taking the country in the right direction? Does he care? And I think in all of those cases, you can say he absolutely does.
The Home Secretary is going to speak this afternoon, Suella Braverman. Some ministers have been a bit reluctant to embrace the language she uses to describe the battle against illegal migration crossing the Channel. Is she speaking the language that you understand?
So I think what she's saying is, and we can all sign up to this, the conventions around, if you like, migration were developed in the 50s. I think clearly the world is a very different place, and we just need to work with our international partners to make sure that we are in the right place today. I think that's an interesting conversation to be had internationally. But of course, we want to try and smash these terrible gangs that are exploiting very vulnerable people.
You've had years to do it.
Well, and of course, and we've been frustrated by the courts, and we've been frustrated by the Commons and the Labour Party vote against all this stuff, but we're going to deliver it. Rwanda is very close to working. We're going to make sure we get through the backlog, and we'll get to a place where immigration is something we can control and use as a tool. So immigration is good for our economy, and we are using people within the economy that are immigrants. But of course, we've got to stop the illegal immigration.
All right. Will you be in the hall cheering her on?
Unfortunately, I've got to go and do another event, but I'll be there for the Prime Minister.
All right, that's Mark Spencer. He's the Minister of State for Food, Farming and Fisheries. With good news, for the first time in 2 years, food prices fell last month. Still to come, Kemi Badenoch says opponents of Brexit are relentlessly trying to talk down our country. We're going to be joined by a passionate Remainer in the Labour Party, of course. Here's the news with Aaron.
It is 10:32. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. Businesses are demanding immediate clarity as confusion continues over the future of the northern leg of HS2. There's growing speculation the government is planning to scrap the Birmingham to Manchester leg because of soaring costs. But the Prime Minister insists a decision is yet to be made. Rishi Sunak is expected to make an announcement, though, on the project at the Conservative Party conference tomorrow. The government's set to ban trans women from female hospital wards. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, is expected to say the plan will help restore common sense to the NHS. In his speech at the Tory conference, he'll announce proposals to push back on wokery in the health service. He told The Telegraph the move will protect women's rights. Under the changes, trans patients would be treated in separate accommodation. Junior doctors will hold a rally outside the conference centre in Manchester later this afternoon. They've started a 3-day strike in England alongside consultants in a row over pay. Radiographers have also walked out for 24 hours, so tens of thousands of patients won't be able to have scans. The British Medical Association wants the government to return to the negotiating table and has warned that if a credible deal isn't offered, new strike dates will be set for November and December. The government says this year's pay rise was a final and fair settlement. Murderers who carry out sexually motivated attacks will automatically face a whole life sentence under new powers. The legal expectation on judges will apply retrospectively to those who've already been charged with the crime but are yet to be sentenced. Justice Secretary Alex Chalk says for the most dangerous and depraved killers, life really should mean life. More on all of our stories on our website, gbnews.com, and I'll be back with more a little later this morning.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
And a quick look at the markets today. The pound buys you $1.2079, €1.1523. The price of gold, £1,510.47 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 7,537 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
But the Business and Trade Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, became the latest minister, well, they say, to set out her leadership aspirations last night.
That's right. She warned that the benefits of Brexit risk being lost if Sir Keir Starmer gets into government, claiming that the Labour leader does not believe in the UK's ability to think for itself.
Well, the former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane, joins us, and we absolutely know he's going to fundamentally disagree with everything that Kemi Badenoch said, which is why we've invited him on, because in GB News we like to have a lively discussion. Dennis, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How is Manchester?
It's a bit wet, to be honest, but Beverly's happy because she's in the mother city. Yeah. Now, Dennis, I think Kemi Badenoch. Yeah. Dennis, I think Kemi Badenoch's speech so far has been the highlight from the platform. Punchy, detail, taking the argument to her opponents, and she was pretty robust on Brexit.
Are you going to play a clip? I'm sorry, Andrew. No, you're not. Okay. Well, I didn't really get what she was trying. How nice. I love the last minister you had on who said we were blessed the country was blessed to have Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. I've never heard the invocation of God of being blessed because we have a particular Prime Minister. But that's just the way the Tory party is going. I didn't know what she was talking about because actually all the party leaders, Ed Davies, Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, are on the same page. No rejoin, no return to the customs union, no return to freedom of movement. And she's a bit like the Minister Claire Coutinho, who we saw yesterday saying that Labour wants to tax meat. But when she's challenged, she just kept blustering and blustering and blustering away. So we've got this fantasy conference now where ministers pop up and just say things that are completely untrue.
What about what she said about Brexit? She said they tell you Brexit is costing Britain 4% of GDP per year. Wrong. The UK's recovery from COVID has outpaced France and Germany, and that is according to the Office for Budget Responsibility, Dennis. Fact. Even you can't disagree with that.
Oh, look, it's very clear that in monetary terms, because of the hugely inflationary pound, we are getting more money at the moment, but in volume terms, our exporters are screaming because they've lost all access. Our service professionals can't do any work in Europe except under incredibly complicated Boris Johnson paperwork and bureaucracy. Our young people, even our craft beer, our independent craft beer firms have had to shut down because they can't access the necessary ingredients. So, I mean, bits of the British economy will always do well.
Dennis, this isn't... Yeah, Dennis, the service exports have gone up. They've gone higher. We're in the top 5 now with service exports.
Yeah, because of Andrew, I'm delighted. I don't have many consultant friends in KPMG and YE and the other great consultancy firms. They're doing very well because they can go abroad. They go abroad actually outside of Europe. They've always done very well. That doesn't add a single extra penny to sorting out poverty, Halifax or Harrogate, or in the north of England, the lost bits of broken Britain, which need jobs, which needs investment, which needs manufacturing. I mean, if Rishi Sunak's really going to tell Manchester, Beverly, drop dead, you're not going to have your good train line that like every other country, Italy, Germany, France, it's got connections between its big cities, well, he's welcome to try and get votes in Manchester.
Dennis, you know what's striking when you look at the key players here at the conference? And we've got Kemi Badenoch, we've got Suella Braverman, we've got Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. We have a very diverse, in terms of race, in terms of ethnicity and gender, actually, at the top of this government. And Labour look incredibly old-fashioned compared to the Conservative mix at that sort of level. Has that occurred to you?
No, I welcome that. I've always welcomed that, and I write a lot for French and foreign media, and I always say Britain is the leading country in Europe for having a government that reflects all of the nation, which is why I was so sad when Suella Braverman said the other day that multiculturalism, multicultural Britain has been a failure. For heaven's sake, say that to Sajid Javid, say that to Eddie Nutt, James Cleverly, say that to Kemi Badenoch. It's an awful insult. The huge efforts many of us have made across parties in the last 20, 30, 40 years. Enoch Powell, when he was the Nigel Farage of his day in the 1960s, early 70s, he wanted to repatriate immigrants. So Kemi's parents, Suella's parents, James' parents would have been repatriated if that Tory Enoch Powell idea had taken hold. It was defeated all round, and now we can work. I mean, David Lammy, Lisa Nandy, Rushan Ali. I mean, I want to reel off the members of the shadow cabinet who are not the same colour as the three of us. I mean, it's a ridiculous kind of point.
OK. All right, Dennis, we need to move on. Dennis McShane there. Now, up next, the Tees Valley Mayor says that Sunak needs to give voters an agenda they can believe in before Christmas, but it's 3 months too long to turn the tables. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10:44. You're with Britain's News on GB News, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. We are in Manchester, the glories of Manchester, for the Tory conference. Bev Turner's first Tory conference. I think it's about my 27th.
In my hometown. It's so nice to be here. I left the hotel this morning to walk around to the conference centre without an umbrella. And you think I would know better, given that I grew up in Manchester, arrived completely soaked.
I'm probably giving away too much. There was a bit of a drama about the hair.
No, there wasn't. I got out my hairdryer, which I brought with me, and sorted myself out.
Charlie Rowley's giggling here because he had a drama with his hair too.
Yeah,
Former advisor to Michael Gove. And Nigel Nelson, who never has a drama with his hair because you don't have enough.
I skipped the road as well.
Did you?
Yeah, I got a 5-minute window to get here without going to the road.
Very good.
25
minutes
you
spent doing your hair and you forgot to bring it with you.
I was here early enough to see the Prime Minister doing the media round. He didn't do many, by the way. He only did 3. But he obviously was grilled about HS2. Charlie, you span for Michael Gove when he was levelling up secretary. How have they made such a mess of the way this has been presented? If they're going to get rid of HS2, why did they allow this to be rumbling on for 2 weeks, all the way into the Tory conference in Manchester, in a former flipping railway station?
Well, I imagine that the announcement itself was either going to be, held until Wednesday, so it's trying to be kept under lock and key.
They didn't announce here ever, were they?
Well, I perhaps not. I mean, it could have been, or it could have been much later in an autumn statement. It could have been after the conference. But the reality is, it's been leaked. It's out there. It's caused huge speculation whether it's going ahead or not. And I think what really needs to happen is clarity. I think we've got that
already.
Quite possibly, but I think
I'm asking, what would you have been advising? Wouldn't you have said, Prime Minister, you have to get this done now? You can't have it hanging on for 2 weeks.
I think so, and I think, look, I think if you just say we're pausing the project because actually the focus is on Northern Rail east to west, that's what people in Manchester want, because it's not fair on the taxpayer, waking up day after day to headline after headline about this ballooning cost of a project that's been mismanaged right from the start. But I do think that, what might have happened is that a decision has been made, but not all the parties have been told to bring Andy Street to make sure that he's comfortable. There might be
the
mayor of Birmingham. So I think there are clearly people haven't been told, and they need to be sort of squared off, as it were, before you then get a full announcement.
With this being leaked then yesterday, will somebody be furiously rewriting Rishi Sunak's speech for tomorrow to factor this in and spin it in a positive way?
Well, it's not really changed from where we were. I mean, as a piece of party management, this has been an absolute disaster.
It has.
That you don't come to Manchester and then say, well, I can't tell you about this high-speed rail train that's actually going to take you backwards and forwards there.
Particularly when the mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, was actually in this building.
Precisely.
Only yesterday, putting the boot in.
So what it sounds like is going on is that the Prime Minister intended to end his speech on Wednesday with a big flourish, which was either to say HS2 is going ahead or HS2 is not going ahead, and we're going to use the money to build an awful lot more rail in the north. That's a possibility. The trouble is that we've got to a stage now where he can't keep saying, oh, no decision's been made, because we know it must have been for him to be able to announce it tomorrow.
And of course, other politicians who've been talking this morning, Alex Chalk, the Justice Secretary, was on our channel as well this morning. Those guys are in a kind of impossible position because they are being pressed on, has the decision been made? And they're all talking about something which is making the Conservative Party look shambolic, rather than clearly put the messaging out there.
Well, there have been a number of policies that have been announced during this party conference, but you're right, they haven't necessarily got the headlines that they probably deserve because of the speculation over HS2. So we've got to wait and see what the final package is. It might be the case that HS2, the leg from Birmingham to Manchester, is just paused, not scrapped entirely, because and you get rid of the people that have mismanaged the project so far.
That's a terrible cop-out. And also from a business point of view, what businesses need is certainty. And what you need if you live in a house on that route, you need certainty. Don't tell me I might have to sell my house. You might bulldoze my house in 5 years' time. I need to know now whether you're going to do
paused
that.
It's really over.
Paused is neither one thing nor the other.
Go ahead. I think that we're now in a situation where it's a yes or no. Ideally, that yes or no should have actually happened a while earlier.
I was in a restaurant last night and there was a few cabinet ministers. I won't say who they were, but I talked to some of their advisors and said, well, guys, girls too, brilliantly handled HS2, and they literally held their heads in their hands. They were in total despair because they know this has hijacked what could have been quite a good Tory conference, because she was doing quite well in the run-up to it, some quite positive announcements, and this is, if you turn on the BBC or ITV, the only story in town.
And look, I mean,
it's about indecision and dither.
Well, and the theme of the conference is making the difficult decisions, taking the difficult decisions for the long-term interests of the country. And this is a very, very tough decision. It will be a difficult decision. It's a project that's been going on since 2009. It's over budget. It's costly. It's caused huge disruption to people. There hasn't been that certainty. I absolutely accept that. So it's about making sure that there is the clarity by the end of the conference, certainly, but also making sure that Rishi Sunak can explain it in a way that says, look, actually, if you do talk to people in Manchester, and I have spoken to a few, not just Tory delegates here, they are actually very, very concerned about the rail between east to west in the north. That is the focus, even more so.
And the other thing is the Labour attack line is that Rishi Sunak is weak. And suddenly he's actually falling into that trap by being weak.
Even though Labour won't tell us what they would do.
No, exactly. Yes, I mean Labour are keeping their powder dry on that one, as on so many things. Just
What will they respond? Do you think? What should they respond? Will they just wait to see what the sort of court of public opinion says first?
Yes, it'll be all that kind of stuff.
We need to see what the real figures are.
It will be that, and they'll say that this is chaos. It just shows what 13 years of Tory government.
It's so boring.
That kind of idea.
That's it. I've just been so distracted. I've just noticed up there. Can you see up there, Bev? There's snipers with their.
I did notice the snipers.
Trained on it.
I didn't actually set them up for you, Andrew.
When Nigel Nelson came on, they said, "Lefty, come on this platform."
I duck under there now.
So sorry, but where we are...
it for me, Nigel.
So you understand, we haven't got a picture of this. We'll try and get one for you later, but where all the windows here are in the railway station, we can see the top of buildings. Yeah. I think there's snipers. There might be cameras, but yeah, I think there probably are snipers. You better behave yourself today.
They're definitely trained on you. No.
Okay.
Just so you know.
We swap seats.
Yes.
Right, what we're going to talk about now. We have a very little table here today, Andrew and I, that we're sharing.
The great Ben Houchen, Lord Houchen as he is now, very popular, very successful elected mayor, says the Tories have got 3 months to turn this round.
Yes, and I don't think that's a rigid timetable. I think every day matters. Because
sound like the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. I think that's a compliment. I'm not entirely sure whether that's.
But why do you say 3 months? Because presumably the next election won't be until this time next year.
We don't know that at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's because you've got to go into the new year on a new footing, don't you?
Yes, and that's absolutely right. I mean, this is actually, I don't think it's been a very good conference at all. There have been very few policies. It's made the Tory party feel even tireder than they were before. Very few new ideas coming out, and a lot of old ideas dusted off. The idea that now Rishi Sunak was lay out his stall by Christmas, well, he should have laid out his stall here. I mean, he's meant to be doing it tomorrow.
Maybe that comes in a barnstorming speech laden, dripping with policy ideas.
Well, maybe it does. Maybe the reason that the other ministers haven't been given any policies is because Rishi Sunak wants to announce them all in one.
We've got Steve Barclay saying today, a very important policy, I think, about trans women will not be in women's wards in hospitals. Yeah. Very important. A lot of women watching and listening to this think, good.
Which I agree with. I mean, although that I still believe a trans woman is a woman.
Oh no, we're not having that argument
now. My Twitter feed has just gone
But you see, the thing is, I don't think it is that important. I think for the number of people that affects, if that's your NHS story on the day of the conference, that's pathetic.
Yeah, but I do think actually extending women-only spaces is really important.
It is important.
And a ward in a hospital is one of the most important places.
Mixed wards with men and women need to go.
Yeah,
and they are saying they'll get but they haven't got rid of them yet.
No, they still exist, but they are in the process of going. So I think that the idea that you have women-only wards, men-only wards, that's the way forward, and that's what they should do.
Yeah. I think that will be welcomed by the public. But I think in isolation, of course, that's not going to be a policy on its own that sort of grips the country. But it's that policy. It's being pragmatic and doing the right thing by the net zero announcement that we had before about mobile phones by HS2. All of these things add up to actually what could be a good package of a Prime Minister that's taking these tough decisions.
They are trying to connect with ordinary voters, because we can bang on about HS2 as much as we like it. I don't think the entire country is as galvanised by this as some of the journalists here. But the Tories saying we are connected. We know problems about phones in schools. Climate change, net zero, very important.
Well, I mean, certainly the climate change one is the big one, and one would actually assume that tomorrow Rishi Sunak will set out the flesh on the bones that he gave us when he was putting all the delays in place.
Yeah.
The key question he's got to answer is, if you delay all the targets that were there to get us to net zero by 2050,
how are you going to do it?
Exactly.
He won't tell us that, my dear, because he won't be Prime Minister in 2050. He might not be Prime Minister in 2024.
That's why I think he doesn't care anymore. The whole thing is he's worked out, look, I've got a very short period in office. 2050 is a long time away, not my problem.
Yeah.
Right, Charlie, Nigel, thank you so much for now. In the next...
They're still staring at us.
And can I just say, what I've learnt about party conferences that you three know well, it basically involves not really sleeping and drinking too much.
I've been very good on
Am I right?
That's the idea.
Yeah, that's the idea. There you go.
I barely touch the stuff. I don't know what you're doing.
Got to move on.
What are you talking about?
Move on, right. Shush. In the next few moments, we're going to throw to the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay. His speech is expected to bring some common sense back into healthcare. That's what he says. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's a blustery, showery day. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Alex Burkill. If we start off looking at the bigger picture, and there is an area of low pressure just to the north of the UK, and tightly packed isobars indicate that it is going to be quite windy, breezy for many of us. Meanwhile, high pressure is building from the south, and that is going to quieten our weather down across southern parts this week. Through the rest of Tuesday, though, yes, it's breezy, and there are plenty of showers around. Some sunny spells in between the showers, but particularly towards the north and west of the UK, Those showers could be quite heavy at times, and there may be some rumbles of thunder mixed in as well. Temperatures are going to be down a little bit compared to recently. It's going to feel quite fresh at times, especially in those brisk, blustery winds. Through the end of the day, we'll continue to see some showers, particularly across northern and western parts. Some clear skies developing down the east and in the south as well. Meanwhile, as we go through the night, we are going to see a swathe of wet weather pushing its way in from the west, affecting many parts of Scotland. Some heavy rain likely here. Temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount for many towns and cities, though some rural spots towards the east where we get the clear skies could turn a little chilly. So Wednesday then, a bit of a north-south split, a fairly wet picture across many parts of Scotland, quite cloudy. The rain will be heavy at times and building up with some high totals, particularly for western parts of Scotland. Meanwhile, a drier picture further south, albeit there will be a few showers to watch out for, particularly across parts of Wales and southwest England. Temperatures for many will be similar to today.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 11 a.m. on Tuesday, the 3rd of October. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, live at the Manchester Tory conference.
So, off the rails, Rishi Sunak is expected to announce whether or not he will scrap HS2 between Birmingham and Manchester tomorrow. The Justice Secretary, Alex Chalks, has thrown his support behind the Prime Minister to make the right decision.
For that, I'm not sure that decision has been made. That decision hasn't been made. This Prime Minister does the right thing on the basis of the evidence, coolly, calmly, unemotionally.
And a trans women ban. Health Secretary Steve Barclay, speaking now, describes his plan to ban trans women from female hospital wards as a victory for common sense.
War on Woke. Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch delivered a rousing speech on race, gender and Brexit yesterday, in which she said that Britain is the best country in the world in which to be black.
I tell my children that this is the best country in the world to be black, because it is a country that sees people, not labels.
And a cheaper food shop. For the first time in 2 years, there's been a monthly drop in food prices. Good news. Will this trend continue? We've talked to the Food Minister this morning.
All of that and a lot more to come this morning. First, though, here is the news with Aaron.
Good morning to you. It's a minute past 11. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB Newsroom. A police officer in Rotherham has been charged with 3 counts of indecent assault on a boy under the age of 14. PC Gary Scott is alleged to have committed the assaults between 2001 and 2003 when he was not a police officer. The 50-year-old will appear before Sheffield Magistrates Court on Wednesday. Now, businesses are demanding immediate clarity as confusion continues to grow over the future of the northern leg of HS2. There's growing speculation the government is to scrap the Birmingham to Manchester leg because of soaring costs. But the Prime Minister insists a decision is yet to be made. He is expected, though, to make an announcement about the future of the project at the Conservative Party conference tomorrow. Meanwhile, the government's set to ban trans women from female hospital wards. We're expecting the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, to say that the plan will help restore common sense to the NHS. He's due on stage at the Tory conference shortly and will announce proposals to push back wokery in the health service. He's told The Telegraph the move will protect women's rights. Under the changes, trans patients would be treated in separate accommodation. Junior doctors are expected to hold a rally outside the conference centre in Manchester shortly. They've started a 3-day strike in England alongside consultants in a row over pay. Radiographers have also walked out for 24 hours, meaning tens of thousands of patients will be unable to have scans today. The British Medical Association wants the government to return to the negotiating table. They've warned if a credible deal isn't offered, new strike dates will be set for November and December. The government, though, says this year's pay rise was a final and fair settlement. Murderers who carry out sexually motivated attacks will automatically face a whole life sentence under new powers. The legal expectation on judges will apply retrospectively to those who have already been charged with the crime but are yet to be sentenced. The Justice Secretary, Alex Chalks, says for the most dangerous and depraved killers, life should really mean life.
Where that is the option that judges should be thinking about as an initial proposition, it now becomes the default. So it's what should happen, unless, of course, the judge decides there are exceptional circumstances. And we think that puts the law in the right place, that meets the instincts of the British people, and, as I say, does justice and provides, a crumb of comfort for families after the most appalling crimes that they feel justice is truly being served.
The Justice Secretary is also expected to announce plans to introduce Jade's Law to Parliament. Named after Jade Ward, who was murdered by Russell Marsh in 2021, the bill will strip parental rights from those who kill their partner. Despite serving at least 25 years in prison, he still retains rights regarding his children. A 12-year-old boy is in critical condition after being struck by lightning in Hertfordshire. It happened during a football tournament at the Seal School in Hertford on Monday afternoon. The boy, who was from another school, was taken to Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge. A man in his 50s was also struck. Lightning also struck a recycling plant in Oxfordshire and it caused a huge fire. A big fireball lit up the sky as well when a gas tank exploded at the food processing plant in Cassington yesterday. Firefighters tackled the blaze overnight and are still monitoring the site. No injuries have been reported. Donald Trump has attacked a judge and a prosecutor on the first day of his fraud trial in New York. The former US president's accused of falsifying business records and financial statements to inflate his own fortune by as much as $2.2 billion. The Attorney General, Letitia James, accused him of lying about his property empire and overvaluing assets to get favourable bank loans. But Trump hit back, saying the trial's a sham and Ms. James is corrupt and the judge should be disbarred, along with making fresh claims of election interference. And we're going to take you live to Manchester now. I mentioned that the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, is about to give his speech. Well, he's doing that now. Let's go live to the Conservative Party conference.
Last year. But conference, as Conservatives, what matters to me most is not inputs. It is the outcomes for patients. And we're making significant progress with the help of new technology. Take strokes. We are using AI to speed up brain scans, meaning thousands of patients have fully recovered who may not have. And by the end of the year, this technology will be available in all stroke units in England. And we're also upgrading the NHS to offer patients a choice of up to 5 different healthcare providers, including independent providers, following a GP referral, which the Patients Association say can reduce waits by up to 3 months. But I also know that it can sometimes take too long to roll out new innovations nationally, even when they have been proven to work in local pilots. So today, conference, I am announcing the creation of a new £30 million fund to speed up the adoption of tech in the NHS. This will enable clinicians to adopt proven technology that can improve patient care. And these could include new tools to detect cancer sooner, to help people receive treatment in their own home, or increase productivity to tackle waiting lists. Projects will be delivered in this financial year, getting benefits to patients as quickly as possible. We're focused on getting the very latest technology into the hands of doctors and nurses so they can benefit you when you need it. And that's the mission I share with my fantastic ministerial team, with Will Quince, Helen Wakely, Neil O'Brien, Maria Caulfield and Laura Markham, all supported by our brilliant PPSs Gareth Bacon and Duncan Baker, and our fabulous whips Faye Jones and Lord Evans. For conference, I want to be clear. We want to give patients more choice and control over their care. And we can only do that with long-term thinking. Take our long-term workforce plan, the largest expansion.
Well, that was Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary. We're delighted in the studio with us, though, here in Manchester, is the Tories' London mayoral candidate, Susan Hall. Susan, extraordinary. Everybody thought it was a pushover, easy for Sadiq Khan. He's been in 2 terms. 2 points ahead of you in the latest poll. Is that down to your huge personality and vision, or is it down to his hated expansion of the ultra-low emission zone?
Oh, I think there's lots of reasons for this. I mean, obviously the expansion zone is a disaster because he didn't listen to what anybody wanted. He never listens to what anybody wants. He does exactly what he thinks he'll do. But I've said all along I will stop it on day 1, which I will. But people are also very, very concerned about policing in London. I mean, we've seen some tragic instances just in the last couple of days, really. And, you know, he has got to get a grip. But if not, I will absolutely get a grip. And those that know me know policing is my absolute passion. And I'm very concerned about things that go on in London, and we need to put it right.
It's a brutal bear pit that you've thrown yourself into.
Yep.
And we're seeing all sorts of left-wing press in particular going after you.
Yep.
I would argue in a way that they don't necessarily go after male candidates, and I don't mind saying that. Why, Susan? Why do you want to do this? Why is it important to you?
Because been born and bred in London. I love London, genuinely, and I have seen it deteriorate under Sadiq Khan over the last 7 years, and somebody's got to get in there and make a difference with common sense policies, and somebody's got to go in there and say what they think. Now, there'll always be media storms the minute you say what you think.
Well, I was going to say, what you think sometimes gets you into trouble, because
Yes.
you've got into trouble now. Well, I'll ask you about it. You said it here yesterday. I know how frightened some of the Jewish community is because of the divisive attitude of Sadiq Khan. What do you mean?
Well, I'm just going back to policing. The way the policing is in London, so many Jewish people do not feel safe. That's wrong, and I will never apologise for defending the Jewish community. I've got so many friends that are literally talking of leaving the country because they don't feel safe. That is unacceptable in London.
Jewish people?
Yes.
Leaving the country?
Yes, going to Israel. I mean, it shouldn't be in that state. Since Sadiq Khan has taken over, these sort of attacks have doubled, literally doubled. I think there's been over 1,000 or around about 1,000 so far this year.
Attacks on Jewish men and women?
Yes, that's right.
Physical attacks or verbal? Or?
Recorded attacks, I don't have the list on them. But that's not good enough. So I will look after all different communities. He is in charge of the police. He should make sure our streets are safer.
Are you getting the support you should have? This is an hugely important election next year. If you win, it will be a massive blow to Keir Starmer and the Labour Party.
Yes, it will.
Here we are at this conference. We've got Steve Bartley speaking at the main conference platform. They've not given you a speaking role on the main platform. Why?
Andrew, do you know what? All the media are asking me that. It really genuinely doesn't bother me. I'm not the sort of person that bothers about state. Yeah, but I want to talk to Londoners. That would give me a platform for the whole of the country. I want to talk to Londoners. And never am I more happy than I'm listening to Londoners, hearing what they say, and talking to events where there are Londoners, which is what I've been doing.
But do you think the Conservatives just that, well, we aren't going to win the election, so we're not putting the resources behind it? Like, are you able to get funding easily for your campaign?
I've got some very generous donors that are beginning to come on board, and I'm very, very grateful to them. But I shall make sure I spend their money very, very wisely. But I'm very lucky with if a donor gives me money, they give it to me just straight. It was no strings attached, nothing. It's so important to me that everything is transparent, and it will be.
That's unusual, because there will be people, there have been over the many in politics, who want to get somewhere. They will take the money to help them, because there might be a little reward at some point in the future, especially as London Mayor, with the power you'd have in our capital city. How easy is it to turn down those sorts of offers?
I wouldn't go near it. It couldn't be easier. I will not be swayed by that. I'll be swayed what Londoners think and what Londoners want. Like Sadiq Khan should have looked at the ULO's expansion and thought, no, Londoners don't want this. They really don't want this.
Yeah.
But he won't listen. I will listen to what Londoners want. You can never please all the people all of the time. We know that, because people have got different views. But you have to listen.
I was talking to a taxi driver yesterday, and as we know, the taxi drivers in this country are the font of all knowledge. There is nothing that they don't have an opinion on. And always when I get into a taxi now, they're complaining about roadworks, particularly in London. Yeah. And they say some days it isn't worth me coming to work because I can't do the mileage to make it worth me taking my car out on the road. What would you do about the state of our roads?
Okay, there's quite a few issues here. First of all, 20-mile-an-hour zones on places like the Finchley Road, utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. That's another thing.
This is a main road.
Sorry, yes, for your view, it's a main road into London, so 3 or 4 lanes. I mean, ludicrous. Around schools and around hospitals and little side roads, I completely get.
Yeah.
But not on main artery roads, so the taxi drivers are complaining about that. But also, if you look at LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods, they're great for the people that live there, except of course you couldn't get a taxi to take you home or whatever. But it's just causing backlog for all the rest of the streets. And of course, when you get idling cars, that's not good for pollution either. It's also absolutely gridlocking all our roads. You look at Park Lane in the middle of London, you've got a bicycle lane been put on one side of it, just literally next to a bike lane in the park next door. It's virtue signalling again game from Sadiq Khan. He'd have us all out of cars. I'm so pleased with the government's attitude now to LCNs, to these ridiculous 20-mile-an-hour zones. We've got to put some common sense back, and that's what Londoners want.
Let's go back to what Bev was talking about earlier about the attacks on you. So you're limiting, you're less on social media now than you used to be. Is that because you're getting so many poisonous attacks on you?
Oh, poisonous attacks. I mean, to be honest, I've got used to that over the years. No, I think that the problem is you've got people are forensically looking at everything I do and assuming very often completely incorrect things. So I'm going to be careful. I mean, when you're not in the public eye as this, you can like things and without any consequences at all. And I mean, those of us that are serial tweeters know that you'll flick through your phone, you'll look at it and you'll press like without real, you know,
so
without.
Is that an admission that you perhaps did you've said some things on social media or like things that perhaps you shouldn't have?
I probably like things that people have misconstrued why I like them.
Right.
Yes, absolutely, and we all know that. And of course, if you're Labour, you'll make the most of that. So I absolutely, given the position I'm in now, will not be doing that
It's
again.
so difficult, isn't it? Because I saw you talking the other night, and you accidentally said "when I'm Labour mayor," right?
Oh, yeah.
I think you went to say the word leader, and you said Labour, and so you. Now, that's human. Those things happen.
I know.
But when you come off a stage and you've made a gaffe like that, we do them regularly on this show. He never knows what time it is. He always says it's 11:20 when it's 10:20. You know, these things happen, especially when you're in a public space and you're talking. So I guess what you're saying is people are taking that too serious. They're jumping on those.
Yes, they are. Yes.
To illustrate you as something that you're not.
Yes, they want to put me in a special box and say, look, she's this, she's that. Well, I will fight back, because at the end of the day, we should have free speech. People shouldn't assume they know what I meant, because very often they get that wrong. Sometimes it suits them. Politically, it definitely suits them. Well, I'm not having it. I will carry on as I am, and I will speak what I consider to be my feelings and the truth, and
well
be
said.
down
And will
for
you
it.
do what Sadiq Khan's doing? Are you going to fly all around the world at our expense, public expense, lecturing us about climate change? Which
No.
I think's a bit, you're not going to do that?
No, I am not. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Oh, I'm just flying around the world to tell you don't fly around the world.
440,000 miles.
Yeah, that's right.
Including taking all his team to Argentina
I know,
to talk about climate change.
And cannabis factories as well. Would I be going abroad selling London? Blooming right I would. It's the best city in the world. We need more visitors, we need more investment. Yes, I would be, but I would not be lecturing people on climate change when I'd been driving a car to the airport or I'd been flying in the air. Of course not.
So the election's on May the 2nd next year.
Yeah.
What do you need to do, Susan, between now and then to push that lead to the front?
Talk to the really good people of London, explain that I am on their side, I am for common sense policies, and actually I want to start talking for the majority. We always talk about smaller groups, and of course smaller groups should be looked after, but as a member of the public years ago, without any connection to this, I used to think, well, hang on a minute, what about the majority of us? Who is standing up for the majority?
And can I ask you just one final question? When you go campaigning, one of the best campaigners I've ever seen on the road is Boris Johnson, who was a very successful mayor of London. Will you go out on the road with him during the campaign?
He's already said he'll help me. Anybody that cares about London and cares about us winning for common sense, looking after people.
You were a fan of Boris, weren't you?
Absolutely, yes. I wish he had a sort of a stardust quality. When you walked into a room, everybody knew he was there. It's something he has that anybody who is a politician would love it.
And you know, we had it yesterday, Nigel Farage. He came in here, it was like a rock star.
Really?
Yeah. Do you like him?
Some
Not trying to
things.
trick you.
No, I know you're not. No. Some of the things he said I've agreed with. I mean, I'm a Brexiteer.
Yeah.
He's said things in the past that I haven't agreed with. But listen, nobody agrees with everybody all of the time. Certainly people don't agree with me all the time. But I just hope they agree with me sufficiently to vote for me on May the 2nd.
All right.
Brilliant. Thank you, Susan.
Hall. You're going to come and see us again soon, I hope.
And what we need in political life are more strong matriarchs, in my opinion, and you come under that category for me,
Thank
Susan.
you.
So good luck with it. Right, Sunak is facing a backlash from Tories, business leaders and Northern leaders over reports this morning suggesting that the HS2 leg to Manchester will be scrapped. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The young lobby member.
It's 11:23. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner at the Tory conference, and we've got Liam Halligan here, barracking me from the sidelines here, and we're also joined by the former. Very briefly, what was your role in this crisis?
I was Environment Secretary then, but Trade Minister before.
Trade Minister before, Ranald Joe, and we're going to talk to you first of all, Liam, about food prices. Good news.
It's worth saying this isn't a story from the Labour Party conference here in Manchester. It's a broader story.
Yeah.
Now we know.
Did you just say the Labour Party here in conference?
Sorry, the Tory Party.
Well done. I'm glad you clarified.
There you are.
I absolutely.
That's next week.
No, I did. I actually went to bed early.
Right. Who with? Okay.
Stop
Andrew, this is a family show. Come on. This isn't a story from party conference. This is a story about inflation. British Retail Consortium have come up with these food price inflation numbers. Now, we know that inflation fell last month from July to August.
Unexpectedly.
Headline inflation from 6.8 to 6.7%. that was ONS numbers, official numbers. But within that, food price inflation, annual food price inflation, was up at 13 to 14%. Huge food price inflation still. Now, the headlines from the British Retail Consortium this morning tell us that food price inflation has fallen. But let me explain.
It's the first time in 2 years.
Yes, but it's fallen month on month.
Right.
It fell in September compared to August by 0.1%.
Well, not much then.
A move in the right direction. But on an annual basis, September compared to last September, food prices, according to the British Retail Consortium, are still 9.9% more expensive.
Wow. It's very
so
high.
all the headlines of food price inflation is down. I'm here to explain to you the reality. Month-on-month food price inflation is down, but year-on-year food price inflation is still almost in double digits.
Which is too high.
Which is far too high. Now, the British Retail Consortium, they would say this, wouldn't they? Oh, there's huge competition between supermarkets, and I'm sure there is some competition between supermarkets, but I must say, as a whole, the food retailing sector is still charging too much, given if you look at what's happened to global food prices on wholesale markets, which are down sharply.
Well, let's bring Aaron on here, because you were yesterday at Liz Truss's big speech. You were a supporter of Liz Truss. You backed her leadership. You were in her cabinet. She's talking about cutting corporation tax. Food inflation is still far too high, 10% annual.
Yeah, 9.9, yeah.
Is this why this government has got to cut taxes, and soon?
Well, I think cutting taxes not only feeds through to consumer prices, but actually helps businesses grow in the first place.
Right.
And, we need to create jobs, we need to create the wealth for this country, and we only do that by enabling businesses to thrive. And it's not just corporation tax. The Conservative Growth Group that I chair, we're calling for the reversal of the IR35 rules that made it really hard for small businesses.
David was talking about that. That really hits small businesses.
Absolutely right.
Admin, accountants fee, really hurts.
And the VAT registration threshold as well. So many businesses stop at 85k because they know they'll have to charge 20% extra if they go a penny over. It's insane. We've left the EU now. We don't have to follow their rules, and we should seize the opportunity.
Small businesses.
Absolutely, and I think we still are. I think we still are. The people here, the response yesterday, people queuing out the door, 200 people had to be turned away, sadly. The people here are still very supportive of these small business policies, and indeed cutting taxes for people too.
Are they still supportive of her, Liz Truss?
I think there is absolutely a desire, excuse me, for the agenda to cut taxes.
It's a very diplomatic answer.
Her speech went down very well. She was good.
I was at the meeting because I was chairing the meeting. So I introduced Liz Truss, I introduced Ranul, I introduced Jacob Rees-Mogg, I introduced Priti Patel. And I must say, I've been doing this stuff quite a long time, going to Parliament, political fringe meetings, at all the party conferences over many years. And what we saw yesterday was a good old-fashioned Parliament fringe meeting that challenged the party consensus. It was 1 hour before the Chancellor stood up. It was massively well attended.
Absolutely.
Better attended than the Chancellor.
It drove all the headlines yesterday, and it was my job to be there and chair and compare and be a journalist, which is what I was. But I must say, I haven't seen Liz Truss speak as well as she did yesterday, ever. There was none of the woodenness.
I think she's been under the same pressure.
I think she's been freed up because she no longer is shouldering the tyranny of the ambition of wanting to lead her party and lead her country.
And she looks like
she's beyond that.
She responded to the love in the room, right? She's only human, and she took such a bashing when she was PM and immediately afterwards. And now there was so much support for her that she really stepped into it. And I think she was talking without notes, wasn't she?
She was talking without notes, and a really interesting piece of politics happened, if I may say so, Ranul, and it happened when you, in your speech, did an aside to me.
Yes.
Because in my introductory remarks, this is important. In my introductory remarks, I said that these four members, these four former cabinet ministers, all of them, and one a former Prime Minister, they were all part of this grouping on the Conservative backbenchers, the Conservative Growth Group, of which, of course, Ranul is the leader. And I said, as hopefully an informed journalist, there are upwards of 50 members. That's quite a lot of the parliamentary party. And Ranul, in an aside, said to me, actually, Liam, jokingly, he said, I think you'll find we're nearer 60.
We're growing.
So the next time I got on the stage to introduce the next speaker, I said, isn't this interesting? Because of that that Conservative growth group, a big chunk of them has said they will not vote for any government legislation that puts taxes up.
Including Priti Patel.
So including Priti Patel. So if there's, including Liz Truss, so if there is a budget statement, an autumn statement or a budget next year, and the OBR says this puts up the total amount of GDP that's taken by tax, a huge chunk of the parliamentary party, the government's own MPs won't vote for it, right? And the number of them is about the same size, 60, as the government's current working majority.
Yeah.
If the government can't get its budget bill through, that's a no confidence.
Can you tell us who the new names are who've come forward? It's in the interest of openness and transparency. Any names that we would know?
No, we don't reveal our names. We're not like one of the research groups and so on. Well, it's for members themselves to set out whether they support our agenda. MPs,
some former ministers.
Absolutely. In fact, there are also additional folks who are even serving ministers who agree with what we're talking about. You know, there you are. There's a break for you right now. I couldn't possibly comment. But, more.
He's enjoying this.
But
the
point,
are they officially members, or are they?
No. They're supporters. They're supporters. But,
a dozen?
No, not quite as many as that. In the ministerial cadre. No, we don't have a WhatsApp group. That, again, to protect people's, people's names. That's right. That's right.
People like me would then get hold of the WhatsApp.
Undoubtedly, being a great journalist.
Steal his phone.
The point is, this just shows that the economic growth agenda hasn't gone away. In fact, it's absolutely crucial for this country. And we've been living in this sort of, in the whole of the Western world, this sort of social democratic model for the last 25 years. No one's wanted to break out of it. And whilst they stopped Liz trying to do that, and whilst Liz has admitted herself she could have done things in a different way, I think the ideas at the heart of it need to be explored still.
Just very briefly, those ministers who come to indicate their support for the Commission, is that this week or in the last couple of weeks?
Over the last few months.
Right.
And what you're saying, just how is it, which I'm just trying to relate how this is relevant to our audience at home. What you're saying, Liam, is if this group has such momentum that they could genuinely scupper budgetary ambitions.
They could stop the government
before the election.
If a government cannot get its budget bill through, or see, every time there's an autumn statement or a budget, there's a piece of legislation called a finance bill, right, that then has to go through Parliament to enact everything.
That would bring the government down. If
that will bring the government down because.
Would you want to do that?
No.
They can threaten. They can threaten.
That's certainly not our intention. We actually focus on trying to work with the government to push them to do the right thing. So they scrap the lifetime allowance, for example. To help doctors stay in public service. Absolutely. So we got that win. They're listening on inheritance tax, which is a terrible death tax that we need to get rid of in this country and costs a fraction of the Treasury's revenue.
And that, Ranald, is, if I may say so, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, that is a very well-spoken but a very clear threat. That is what is.
I don't threaten people.
What I mean is, if there are, and I'm not saying that there aren't, if there are upwards of 60 members of this Conservative growth group, and the government's working majority is 60, which it is once you take out Sinn Féin and the parliamentary tellers and the Speaker and all the rest of it, then these guys could threaten to stop the budget bill.
And I have to stop our conversation dead as well. Gentlemen, lovely to see you. Thank you so much. Really interesting.
Not denying it.
Right, Andrew's going to have a little walk around the conference floor in the next few minutes. But first of all, here's Aaron with the news.
It's 11:32. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. Businesses are demanding immediate clarity as confusion continues over the future of the northern leg of HS2. Rishi Sunak has refused to confirm he'll curtail the planned line to Manchester despite widespread expectation it is to be axed. The Prime Minister says the enormous cost has gone far beyond its original budget and insists a decision has yet to be taken. Rishi Sunak, though, is expected to make an announcement about HS2 at the Conservative Party conference tomorrow. Well, the government plans to ban trans women from female hospital wards. Health Secretary Steve Barclay told his party's conference in the last half an hour we need to respect the privacy, dignity and safety of all patients and recognise the importance of different biological needs to protect the rights of women. Under the changes, trans patients would be treated in separate accommodation. Junior doctors will shortly hold a rally outside the conference centre in Manchester. They've started a 3-day strike in England alongside consultants in their row over pay. Radiographers have also walked out. That's for 24 hours, meaning tens of thousands of patients will be unable to have scans. The British Medical Association wants the government to return to the negotiating table, and they've warned that if a credible deal isn't offered, new strike dates will be set for November and December. The government, though, says this year's pay rise was final and fair. Murderers who carry out sexually motivated attacks will automatically face a whole life sentence under new powers. The legal expectation on judges will apply retrospectively to those who've already been charged with the crime but are yet to be sentenced. The Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, says for the most dangerous and depraved killers, life really should mean life. That is it for the moment. More is on our website, gbnews.com. I'll be back with more at the top of the next hour.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's how the markets look this morning. The pound buys you $1.2074, 1.1515 euros. The price of gold, £1,512.50 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is currently trading at 7,523 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
9, 8. Good morning. Hello. Still to come, the Health Secretary says that trans women will be banned from female hospital wards. Has common sense returned to healthcare? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Is this us? Oh, Andrew, hang on.
Would be my MP if I was still living in Swindon, Swindon South. Now, I can intrude on private grief here, Robert, because last year you were speaking from the conference platform because you were the Justice Secretary.
Well, that's right. Back in 19, I would have been in the main hall, but, you know, things move on. Politics is a cruel trade, and I'm back here on the floor and enjoying seeing all the exhibits.
Well, let's have a wander around. How do you think the conference is going? Because there's been this huge row over HS2. Can you explain to me, as a former member of the Cabinet, how the Cabinet have got themselves into a huge row about a rail link which is going to be cancelled when the conference is in Manchester in a former railway station?
Well, look, I think you can't guard against leaks, and I gather that a few weeks ago a canny photographer took a picture of a minute that then led to the whole story developing. And, you know, the Prime Minister's got to make some tough decisions. It's not an easy job, a very lonely job.
Yeah.
I think he needs a bit of time and space to make the best informed decision he can, because this is public money we're talking about, and we've got to make sure that we spend it wisely.
And what about Tory conference? What is the point of Tory conference?
Well, I mean, look, this is a great moment for the Tory family to come together every year. This is my 28th conference, Andrew.
Really?
Yes, you've heard it from me. 1986 was my first Tory party conference. Margaret Thatcher, this rose is the rose of England, which you might remember.
I do.
It was a great speech.
But those were the days when there was real leadership in the Tory party. Margaret Thatcher, the greatest leader this country's ever had apart from Church.
Well, she was an extraordinary person, and you know, we all remember her very, very fondly indeed as somebody, as the resolute approach is the words I always associate with her. But, you know, we mustn't be nostalgic. Yeah, looking back is a good thing, but wallowing in nostalgia is not what we're about. And in modern politics, in modern government, complex decisions have to be made every day. I made thousands of decisions as a Secretary of State.
Were they all right?
No,
were they all correct?
No, but
I
took the best decisions on the best evidence at the time, and I'm confident that looking back, my record was a good one. I changed sentencing, did a lot of reforms that I wanted to do for years, and toughened up the system in a way I think the public would support. But, you know, political careers don't seem to last that long, Andrew. I mean, in the glare of publicity, they seem to sort of disappear very quickly, don't they? And I think that's a sad reflection, perhaps, of where we are.
You're on GB News now. We've had people like Priti Patel saying how fabulous it is to have GB News, such a big part of the political narrative now. But what's your view?
Well, you know, I'm a willing participant on GB News. Always happy to come on your show and some of the other shows. I think it's a sign of a vibrant democracy that we have different news channels like GB News making their contributions. So I'm a full-throated supporter.
Now look over here.
Oh, yes.
Now look at these lovely things you can buy here. I'm not asking you to buy me anything. There's something called here. There's a Tory boy. Look at this. Look at this.
Oh,
look at this. Tory boy.
Well, I don't know about the boy anymore. I mean, I think I'm a little more mature than that.
Some of those, you know.
Did you?
Yeah,
it's good, though.
I think they're rather
it's
nice.
rather good.
So, and we probably don't want that
I
one,
hate
do we?
people.
No.
I'm not sure about that. I think that's probably Labour economic policy.
This is a good
Granada, look at that. The home. Oh, no. This is
now,
us
tell us
getting,
about this.
So we're getting nostalgia because Manchester, the home of Granada, great independent production company, produced Coronation Street and many other great dramas. Andrew and I grew up with this sign from the north, Granada.
Elsie
Tanner, Pat Phoenix, a great character, and of course, who can forget Ina Sharples, and of course the great Albert Tatlock. Now that's digging deep into the past.
So this is me with Robert. Robert, come on, tell us who you are.
Robert Buckland,
MB for Swindon South, former Justice Secretary, who this time last year would have been speaking with the platform. But lovely to talk to you. Back to you, Beverly, with the panel.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I am back here in our little studio with Nigel Nelson and Charlie Rowley this morning. Hello, gentlemen, both putting your phones away very quickly. It's a fast-moving situation here, isn't it? There's loads of stories
we wouldn't be allowed this in school, would we? Nigel would ban the mobile phones.
Yes, exactly. I have to say, let's talk about that for a minute. I think that is such a good news story that Gillian Keegan has saying that she's going to ban phones in schools. What do you make of it?
As long as the kids aren't doing live news and need to keep up with it. I think that's absolutely right. Yeah, when you actually get to school, what you should be doing is concentrating on your lessons. It's quite right that they also don't get access to their phones during break time.
Yes.
I think the answer is, and a lot of schools do it anyway, when the child gets to school, you hand in your mobile. At the end of the day, when you leave, you pick it up again. It's fairly simple.
Yeah.
And it means they can concentrate on what they're doing.
I think so, Charlie. I think the implications as well for the concentration span of these kids, that constantly half their mind is distracted. We all do it. We've all done it sitting here. We're thinking, well, I'll just quickly check what's happening on Twitter. I'll check. Kids need to concentrate in the classroom.
They absolutely do, and you're absolutely right. When we're looking at Twitter to get the latest news, kids are usually on today Instagram or TikTok, where there's lots of videos and content that they get distracted by. There's also a lot of bullying that takes place online harm. So taking all of that away out of the classroom to allow kids to focus on what they're there to do, which is to study, to learn, to get the best education they possibly can without the distractions, I think it's a welcome move.
I do. I think it's a brave thing to say. I think it's commonsensical, and I'm massively behind Gillian Keegan on that one. So the other speech we heard earlier this week, this is Jeremy Hunt talking about clamping down on the work shy and benefits claimants. And when I was listening to this, Nigel, I was thinking, well, hang on, it is already difficult to claim benefits if you can't demonstrate that you're looking for work. So how is it different? Do we know yet?
No, because he won't tell us. I mean, like a lot of things around here, like HS2 and so on, no one will actually tell us any detail about what's going on. So all he said is he wants to clamp down. It could be making sanctions worse against people if they're not turning up for work interviews. The one area where I think he might go for, but we'll have to see when he announces his autumn statement, is there is a system whereby if you get benefits or earnings of up to about £355 a month, you then have to go to compulsory job centre interviews. That is being raised to £494, which captures an extra 114,000 people. So what it means is, even if you're sick, what you'll have to do, you're claiming some benefits, you may work part-time, you will have to go to compulsory job centre interviews, what they call a work incentive programme, to try and get you into a job or a better job.
Popular then, do you think, Charlie?
Well, I think it will be, because what's obviously clear, and the Chancellor and the Secretary of State for the Department of Work and Pensions have clearly identified that there are far too many people that are still on the benefit system that aren't going into work, or that are refusing to turn up to the job centres to get the sort of training to go into work. So coupled with the increase in the minimum wage up to £11, and that might increase further if that's what the Living Wage Commission sort of come out with. So you could have an increase in the minimum wage, and you should have more people not relying on benefits that are moving into work and jobs, because it's not just about earning a wage in a job. You have the social skills. You have it's a purpose and value in life.
Charlie, have you used the word that I like to use, the word shirkers?
Yes, we should be supporting the workers, not the shirkers, and that's what was in the.
And there are people who are sick, and there are people who
there are shirkers.
There are some people who, don't want to get a job, but rather live on benefits. I don't think it's as many as that you'd like to pretend.
Well, I think the government's saying 100,000. That's quite a lot.
No, the 100,000 they're talking about is something completely different.
Right.
So these are people who will get intensive work.
Oh yeah,
training.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So and it's just changing the threshold at which they get it. So these people aren't shirkers. Some of them are doing part-time jobs. Some of them are not well enough to do a full-time job. Obviously, each individual is different.
And some are shirkers.
No, but the benefit system, we all understand and appreciate that it's there to help people that are absolutely in need. But it should always be, not a handout, a handout,
a handout, not a handout.
There you are.
Exactly. Tory slogan.
Exactly. Right, fellas, what else are we talking about this morning?
We've got
Andrew's hot-footed it back, you've noticed, from his little
It's
tour.
rather nice. I bumped into, if I was still living in Swindon, he'd be my local MP.
Oh, right.
Well, for now.
Right, yes,
It's a
indeed.
majority of 6,500.
There's a lot of
Not
MPs
great.
around here who I've noticed are meeting with the businessmen have also turned up, and you can see they're all looking for jobs.
Yeah, look, and of course you're already hearing of MPs, tour MPs standing down in where they've got majorities of 8, 9, 10,000 because they think they may lose their job, and they're already thinking, we need to get my CV out there because they don't want to be with dozens of other MPs looking for a job, because former MPs are not easily employable.
No, and especially if they're all on the jobs market at the same time after an election.
Why are they not easily employable? What's wrong with them?
They used to be, but people, I don't think the kudos is there anymore of having an MP or a former
Slightly
MP
concerning.
on the headed paper.
If they can't get a normal job, why are they doing running the
I
country?
mean, it's much harder to get a job. I mean, imagine you're an MP who's made a huge mistake, or say a former Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, who made a huge mistake. He may well need a new job, but if
he's carrying on though.
Well, if he's carrying on, then he won't need a new job for the time being. But you can imagine someone like that.
Yes.
Now, would you, if you were a big finance house, would you want him on your letter-headed paper?
Probably not.
Having trashed the economy. So I think there are some difficulties with them getting jobs.
It's particularly hard, I think, also if there's a change of government. It's not just standing down as an MP or losing your seat. If there's a change of government, and I don't believe there will be, I have to say, I'm sure there is a breaking news, folks.
Which cheek was your tongue in when you said that?
You know, I'm still convinced we're going to get a hung parliament. I'm almost prepared to bet on that now for a year's time.
It's not a bad bet to take.
Yeah, I
mean,
agree.
I think that the polls, or they're already closing, but the idea of a 20-point lead for Labour, that isn't going to happen.
No, I agree.
It's not.
And if you look at the local election results back in May, if that was extrapolated nationally, that would have delivered a hung parliament.
Yeah.
It is possible we'll get one. Under the present polling, you'd think the Lib Dems might come back with 28, 30 MPs. We are in the realms of coalition again.
Oh, no. Yeah, but
I liked that coalition.
Yeah, but the Lib Dems have made it absolutely clear they will only serve. They won't be in a formal coalition with Labour. They'd have explain what a supply and
confidence and
supply.
Yes.
Explain how that works.
Yes, basically the way it works is you agree to vote with the government party on a range of issues. So they will get their legislation.
The finance bill would go through, for instance.
Yes, but you don't have a formal coalition. The important thing about 2010 and David Cameron is he put a great deal of thought into how coalition would work, and he embedded Lib Dem ministers in every department, and had a Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg, who was a Lib Dem.
And two of the cabinet ministers in that cabinet lost their seat, Vince Cable and Ed Davey.
Indeed,
because the voters didn't like them for it. They were elected as Liberals and served in a Tory cabinet.
Nick Clegg knew. I mean, I had a conversation with him about this during the 2015 election. He knew he was destroying his party by going into coalition. They're a protest party.
Yeah, the junior partner always gets.
Yeah, but however, his point was, and I think that I respected that, if you get the chance to go into government and do something, and you turn that opportunity down, what are you in it for?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, the only two things I'd say about the polls is that I was there in 2017. Well, I was here in 2017. You know, Theresa May had a 20-point lead in the polls going into the campaign. And if you go back to 2010, you know, Gordon Brown was, eviscerated by the media. And this was a grumpy chancellor that, splashed the cash. The country hated him. But, people actually, didn't feel they had the confidence totally in voting for change in David Cameron. And I think people will recognise as the campaign goes on, people will look at Rishi Sunak, and I don't think it's a done deal.
I agree. But Theresa May was also probably the worst campaigner I've ever seen, ever. As a Prime Minister, she was more wooden than the Forest of Dean. She was terrible.
Well, that's why Boris did so well immediately.
By comparison.
By her own admission, I think she said she wasn't the best communicator. But as a campaigner, she was in her constituency every weekend. She was knocking on doors.
While we're talking about female politicians, it's occurring to me, we had Susan Hall in here just a moment ago. I don't know whether you saw that, the Conservative candidate for London Mayor. What do you think of the challenge that she has ahead of her? Because when she put her name into the ring, when she got the nomination, actually, there was an assumption, well, Sadiq Khan is just going to sweep the board anyway. London is predominantly Labour. It's hugely ethnically diverse, and people will vote for him. She's creeping up in a very convincing way. What does she need to do to overtake?
Well, I think that ULEZ has an awful lot to do with it.
Oh, massive. It's massive.
That seems to have been, I mean, given what happened in Uxbridge, which has spooked every politician.
This was the by-election held after Boris resigned.
And a protest over ULEZ.
And they turned it into a referendum on ULEZ,
Yes.
and they held the seat.
Yes, indeed. And I think that's what has spooked all politicians, from the Labour Party to the Tory Party. I think that is the key to why Rishi Sunak started putting back climate change targets.
Yeah, good.
There is a feeling out there that you
It was
press
a
ahead
domino
with this
effect,
thing.
wasn't it? That tipped the first one.
I don't think it's right, by the way, but that's what's happened.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant that he's doing it.
Well, I think for Susan in particular, you know, she's a Londoner. You can tell she's a Londoner.
Yeah.
She talks for London. She stands up for London. You know where she's
decent.
She's decent.
Unspun.
And exactly. And when she got the nomination, you remember the front page of the Evening Standard.
It was appalling.
It printed that awful photograph of her looking a bit sort of awkward. I think the public see through that, and they will be looking at her thinking she's standing up for London versus Sadiq Khan that's doing all sorts just to get out of London.
She may not thank me for this, but she was saying off camera that there are lots of people around her who are saying, we need to style you differently, we need to do your makeup differently, we need to do your hair differently. And she says, I'm not interested. This is who I am. Don't make me into
Susan.
something that I'm not.
I know.
I can't be bothered with having my hair done differently or my makeup done differently. The men aren't having those same sorts of pressures. And I love that about
Authenticity
her.
is key, I think.
Why there aren't enough women in politics is for that very reason.
Yeah.
Women are treated differently in politics.
Yeah.
So it is things like that. Are you wearing the right dress? No one would suggest to a man, are you wearing the right dress?
Do you remember the fuss Theresa May got into when she wore a pair of Amanda Wakely trousers?
Yeah.
And she only wore them for a photo shoot. She gave them back. She wasn't. They weren't even. The fuss went on for weeks and weeks, didn't it?
Yeah, and which is why it's very difficult to be a woman in politics.
Yeah.
That's the fact they get far more abuse.
Yeah, well, she's certainly getting a lot of abuse, isn't she? I'm saying.
And I do feel that, you know, female politicians, whether it's Theresa May, whether it was Liz Truss, whatever the policies and the views of Liz Truss, you know, I think she, you know, being a woman, I think she might have got a rougher ride than if a male prime minister.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
Right, Nigel Nelson, Charlie Rowley, always great to see
Great
you.
to
No
see
doubt
you
we'll hit
boys.
the bar a little bit later. Right, up next, it's the live desk with Mark Longhurst and Pip Thompson. Hi, guys. What have you got on today's programme? I don't know whether we can see them.
Why are they playing this?
I don't know. Quite like it though. Maybe we should just.
Can you hear this?
There's Pip. Hello, Pip. Can you hear us? We want to know what you've got on the show today.
Yes, she can. What's happening?
Hello, it's a blustery, showery day. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. I'm Alex Burkill. If we start off looking at the bigger picture, and there is an area of low pressure just to the north of the UK, and tightly packed isobars indicate that it is going to be quite windy, breezy for many of us. Meanwhile, high pressure is building from the south, and that is going to quieten our weather down across southern parts this week. Through the rest of Tuesday, though, yes, it's breezy, and there are plenty of showers around. Some sunny spells in between the showers, but particularly towards the north and west of the UK, those showers could be quite heavy at times, and there may be some rumbles of thunder mixed in as well. Temperatures are going to be down a little bit compared to recently. It's going to feel quite fresh at times, especially in those brisk, blustery winds. Through the end of the day, we'll continue to see some showers, particularly across northern and western parts. Some clear skies developing down the east and in the south as well. Meanwhile, as we go through the night, we are going to see a swathe of wet weather pushing its way in from the west, affecting many parts of Scotland. Some heavy rain likely here. Temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount for many towns and cities, though some rural spots towards the east where we get the clear skies could turn a little chilly. So Wednesday then, a bit of a north-south split, a fairly wet picture across many parts of Scotland, quite cloudy. The rain will be heavy at times and building up with some high totals, particularly for western parts of Scotland.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across